So my name's Scott Knox. I'm President and CEO of the Institute of Canadian Agencies, ICA for short. And our role is to positively impact the business environment for marketing, advertising, media and PR agencies to thrive. We currently have a campaign running called Brands Need More Canada, because looking at the world stage, Canada is the number 4 country creatively in the world, according to World Advertising Research Centre. And of the top 100 most marketing effective agencies in North America, 26 are Canadian. So we're open for business. We can do it. We need more options. We need more business in the country. So let's stop brands assuming that the only place in the world you'll get good marketing communications is New York or London, and bring us the business to Canada.
Founded in 2017, StartWell is Toronto's independent hub for innovators to collaborate. Our podcasts relate perspectives from the world's most diverse urban population to reflect unique insights into global business, media, and culture.
Okay, so brands need more Canada. What, if anything, is the brand value of Canada for the creative services world out there, in the world?
If I'm honest, not enough.
Okay.
And I say that really, living here and working here, I see the great creative work we do. But on my travels in talking to really the gatekeepers to new business for our industry, pitch consultants in the likes of London and New York, where a lot of the big global brands go to have assistance in finding a great agency, the knowledge of the Canadian marketplace is really woeful. They may mention 1 or 2 brands, 1 or 2 agencies, a campaign or 2, but it's not like, as you can tell from my accent, the 15 years I did this job, but for the United Kingdom. The texture, the fabric, the understanding of great creativity coming from our industry was living, breathing. It was understood globally. And you come to a city like Toronto or any of the other great cities in our country, and you just reflect on, nobody knows what's here. And that's the problem. Our reputation is not strong enough, and that's what we've got to work hard to do. And we know we've got great work to showcase for it. We just need to do it a bit harder.
How much do you think that has to do with the actual brand equity of the place in the global mindset?
I'm not entirely sure, because the thing is, when you look at it from point of view of what do people outside of Canada think of Brand Canada, there is strength in Brand Canada. What we're known for culturally is really understood. It might be a little bit joked about, the I'm sorry every 10 minutes, the being overly kind and nice, but actually, particularly in today's climate, there's the warmth that comes from understanding who Canadians are. What I think the difference is what does that mean in a business context? What does creativity lift and deliver in that context? The question is, do we have the commercial acumen in our country to design, deliver creative communications that matter? And the thing is that we have been doing for many years, but not enough people know it. And I think the big thing is for the industry is understanding what is Canadian and showcasing that to the world. At the moment, outside of North America, people assume everybody's American. And we need to adjust that, and we need to not, and I often say to the industry, don't get as arrogant as us Brits or those Americans, but actually put a bit more spring in the pride of your step to go, actually, this is what we're capable of, and actually taking into account the nuances of diverse markets with diverse culture, various languages. We can hit it out the park, unlike most of the G7. And so I think there's a lot to unpack and share. The final bit to this really is government support. I mean, I come from a country where, whether it be the British Council, the Department of Trade and Industry, was consistently helping the creative industries do and deliver. We were always going on trade missions to different countries. We were always taking part in business conversations, whether it be at home or abroad. Here, that hasn't happened. And so we're very much in our infancy as an industry here in Canada, as part of the economy, to showcase our value and therefore to get government support. And actually, I'm really pleased to say that for the first time ever, we have had the ICA this week, an investment of funds from the Canadian government to help us understand and sell both in the UK and internationally. It's not a big pot of money, but it's a starter. And it's the first time we've engaged in a relationship with government. And we hope that will just grow and continue in the way that, you know, we can properly compete. At the end of the day, everything that Canada's achieved on the world stage with reputation at major award shows have been built by the businesses here in Canada themselves. The UK and the US, and arguably countries like Brazil, Australia, have all had sizable government investment to do that. We've done it on our own.
Right.
So if we have the support of the rest of the economy through government incentives and tax incentives and so on, then just think where we could be. And I would love to see us, and I mean this wholeheartedly, overtake our number 3 competitor, which is the United Kingdom, my former home country marketplace.
Yeah, I think there's something to being a challenger brand in this itself.
Oh, God, absolutely.
And the scrappiness of kind of encouraging that win is exciting. What do you think are the challenges in the way of the Canadian creative industry's kind of marketing itself, or to foreign buyers?
I think what we need to do is talk about the work that we do. We have to talk about marketing effectiveness. We have to talk about the work that works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all too often our industry is, and I don't want to 100% detract from award shows that recognize creativity. That's important. But what's more important is work that works. And I think that the more we can showcase the fact that we are given smaller budgets than our competitors in the United Kingdom and the United States and other parts of the G7, and actually what we deliver as a result is far superior, more naturally integrated across different channels, that therefore we are ripe to deliver more. And I think if we can showcase how effective the work is that we deliver. Now, on top of that comes actually a global industry-wide issue, is our articulation of work that works.
Yes.
Our industry is very good at delivering case studies that speak to creativity, and that's brilliant. But if we're going to get more checks signed and more investment into marketing creatively and in terms of all forms of marketing communications, if we need that investment to come in, then we need to articulate the business challenges this creative actually stands to meet and what it achieves as a result. And that means us putting on our big girl business pants and talking about what we deliver, as opposed to, isn't that gorgeous? Isn't that beautifully creative? And there's nothing wrong with that. But for a CEO, a COO, a CFO, add some more of the C-suite into those, they want to see, well, what was the return on investment? And we need to articulate that far better as an industry globally.
Right.
And double down on what we're capable of here in Canada.
I think a big part of this is a couple of different angles that I've had conversations lately about many times in the last 2 years, let's say, with companies that have, are in this like post-pandemic reality now. And they're rebirthing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, okay, well, what is our internal marketing capacity? Where will we engage agencies?
Mm-hmm.
And what mix of internal and external do we need to rely on in a regular capacity to expand both our ability to spend on marketing effectively,
Mm-hmm.
yes, but then also to rely on as a channel, as a revenue driver. And I think to hopefully bolster and grow the business. And I think I hear a couple of things. So one thing is, agencies don't seem, definitely here in Canada, to be doing outbound business development. I haven't at all heard of many agencies, definitely not sizable ones, going out to win business. And so perhaps that's something when you take the collective to say, well, they're not marketing themselves to the world. So that's one thing that we could talk to about how the ICA is enabling that industry-wide. And then the second thing is that on the client side, it's a very difficult proposition, always has been, I think, to try and find an agency if you're not dealing with millions of dollars of annual budget. The procurement alone can be something that people don't have the budget to expend the admin costs on. So what are your thoughts on those two things?
Yeah, I think the two things there are acute problems for the industry. I think let's start with agencies marketing themselves. That one of the things that surprised me the most when I moved to Canada, having been in the agency sector for a good number of years in the UK, was every agency, particularly in London, has a marketing director, if not a marketing department for the agency,
Right,
or a new business department that the role was to deliver the brand equity of that agency outward to the market, and then to manage, be a conductor of the orchestra as a new business opportunity travels through the agency. That doesn't happen here. And the investment in new business is not strong.
why is that though?
I think it's just, in many ways, I think it's the problem is it's a smaller market. So what you have is you have agency C-suite who are not only managing the business, developing thought leadership, they'll also be managing 7 accounts. Oh, and on top of that, they'll be doing new business. And so the ability to take a step back, to look at the strategic growth of the agency, the business model of the agency, and then new business, the bandwidth is shrunk and shrunk. And so the Canadian marketplace, similar to some of the other more medium-sized and definitely smaller marketplaces in terms of marketing spend across the world, is we struggle to be able to invest in what needs to be done in order to develop the agency sector in totality, or just singular business.
Right.
People don't have the time to be in the world, which makes it all challenging. And I think we need to look at that. I think agencies need to be more strategic about their marketing development, and they need to invest in it and a bit more seriously. And if that means they need to get sharper elsewhere in the business, then you have to do that. And that starts with stop letting clients nickel and dime you to the bone to have a blended hourly rate to deliver and execute that work. Because the minute you do that, your ability to invest in other parts of strategically developing the agency are just shot.
Yeah, your margins are just out of whack.
You're never going to be able to get there. And we are a marketplace in Canada where 83% of the market creatively, media, it's different, but creatively is dominated by independent agencies. So they have the ability to make those choices and changes. And so they need to, if they're going to develop a strong future-focused business. But the problem is agencies have a tendency to be order takers and therefore not feathering their own nest, which they absolutely have the right to do if they're going to be a strong future developing business. On the procurement side and finding an agency, if I'm on the client side, the challenge there is that, I'm going to sound like the 52-year-old fart I am now, but in the days when I was going up the ranks of the industry in London, marketers were expected to know the agency sector. They're expected to know who the players were. Even when procurement started to roll into town, they're expected to know and understand the marketing landscape. What you have now is that you have, I'm afraid, marketers, and it's particularly acute here in Canada, where their knowledge of what is the marketing industry is not strong enough for them to be competitively picking and choosing their agency, let alone any other business partner. And what that means is you end up in a market that's actually very short-term tactical. And what they do is they just buy tech platform inventory and push out what are bog standard narratives, hoping that their sales figures will go up.
Right.
And what we need to do is we need marketers to understand the old adage that was being put forward years ago by Peter Field and Les Binet, the long and short of it. Short-term tactical is one thing and it will help you. But if it doesn't have long-term brand building, you will not see an increase in your sales or any other metric you are trying to deliver against. You'll be constantly balancing a swing backward and forward in success story. And what that means is if you're going to invest in brand building, you need to know who the agency brand builders are out there. And you need to invest with them in commonality and growth and strength. There is absolutely no point in a brand working with an agency where it is not interested in the success of that agency, because it will not deliver for you if you are draining the hell out of it.
Absolutely.
And so, but at the same time, the agencies need to put on their big girl business pants and go out and say, you want that, Mr. or Mrs. Client? I love that for you, but it's going to cost you this.
Sure.
And if you're serious in the business attitudes and what you want to measure in terms of success, we'll do that with you. But if your short-term tactics are all you're after, I don't think most agencies should bother working for them, to be quite frank. Because what's the point? The other thing about the cost efficiencies within procurement and how brands work, procurement has been driven to be a cost-cutting exercise. No matter what brand tries to convince me otherwise, it's frankly horseshit.
Right.
What they do is spend time justifying procurement practices. So we're going to have to run a review every 2 years or every 3 years. Why?
Right.
Marketing effectiveness research across the globe will tell you the longer the tenure your relationship with your agency business partners, the more successful you will be.
Mm-hmm.
So arbitrary procurement practices that actually come from commodity purchasing are building inefficiencies in marketing, service, supply.
Yes.
So instead of setting up robust long-term relationships, what they do is churn over to satisfy procurement practices.
Like
and that needs to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so there's problems on both sides of this table. And I think, we live in of course, we live in a entertainment fueled economy in some ways these days. And I think that education is often not, entertaining enough for people, so they don't go through the depths of trying to seek information. I've seen this a lot, of course, in a lot of my background's in technology. So in scale tech companies that are dealing with, even if they're revenue positive, hundreds of millions of dollars a year of revenue coming in, and they don't build out an internal marketing team with anyone that's had more than 1 year of marketing experience or 2 years of marketing experience. They've never seen anything through past an initial campaign launch. And so they're stuck in that procurement loop of not understanding what they're buying or how to buy it. And they've got one foot out the door. So by the time something kicks off and an agency starts getting into working, they're gone. So who's going to assess the value that they've created?
Well, this is where I think a lot of the C-suite. So many years ago, the chief marketing officer, or in the UK would have called the marketing director, most of the time was on the main board.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. And what that means is either you put them back on the board, or somebody else on the board has to understand marketing effectiveness. And I think it actually goes a bit further than that. If I was to look at the roles of the likes of Moody's and Standards and Poor's, they are there to give a company a AA, a AAA rating, not only based at this single point in time, but what they assume their future capability in terms of market is going to be. I don't hear anybody at Standards & Poor's or Moody's talking anything about marketing effectiveness or the value of the brand. Or if they are, it's that at best. It's not scientific.
No, it's...
And I think there's a duality of a problem there. We haven't, as an industry, gone to those organizations to say, you're not doing it correctly, let us inform you.
Right.
And equally, they're not asking the right questions. And ultimately, the CEO is bothered about the corporate rating, therefore will be bothered about what they're saying, not what their suppliers are saying. And until we change the circular of that mindset, then the businesses will not be aimed at achieving what they need to achieve.
Yeah. If marketers don't market themselves, how do the people at companies, even outside of the CMO's office, get excited about marketing?
Do you know, the interesting thing about that is that I have a bit of a fear about sometimes how marketing expenditure works. And one of the most alarming things was at during, and the brand and the individual will remain nameless, but at the grand Effie judging for the Effie Awards that we run last year, one of the clients in the room, because it's 50-50 client and agency judged, said, I spent X million on sponsorship and I couldn't tell you what any of it does. And my first gut reaction was, and whose fault is that?
Right.
You hold the job title. And actually I thought, no, actually, Why isn't the CEO asking that question? And the thing is that unless we have marketing held to account, marketing will sometimes within sizable corporations be post-rationally judged. And what we need to do is get to agreed models that say this is what marketing effectiveness looks like.
Right.
And then everybody can be measured against it. The problem is we're like the Wild West right now as far as what means what. How many likes, click-throughs, who cares? Did it sell? Did it increase share price? And the thing is, I do worry that a lot of marketing departments are given a pot of money because the C-suite feel marketing is a necessary evil. It's not an investment strategy. It's not about innovation. It's we've got to do it. So here's a pot of money, and then they walk away. Instead of going, I'm going to give you this, and I want you to show me what it delivers on return on investment. More than that, actually, there would be more, but I need you to come back to me and tell me why I should write another check.
I find it time and time again as well that, the agency relationship is one of liability control. A lot of companies will hire agencies rather than even taking on work, or I should say, taking on more responsibility within the CMO's office. Even when it comes to articulating what their brand is and helping the agency do their work, they'll kind of hire them, keep them at bay, and let them shit the bed because they've been left in the dark.
And then run a massively expensive pitch process to replace them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's not a new problem in our industry.
Right.
You know, long-term relationships have been few and far between. They need to be there. What I wish CEOs would realize is that regardless of the tenure of your CMO, your agency that's been working for you longer than the CMO's been there knows more about your brand than you do. And so why aren't they more involved with picking the next CMO? And why are they not more involved with the strategy? And the other interesting thing about our industry, if you think about you mentioned the phrase on risk factor, do you know, it has always astounded me why it is that corporations will, when a bank asks for huge amounts of information in order to put $20 on the table for them, they will bend over backwards to make sure that bank is happy. When that bank has absolutely nothing to do with the future success of that corporation.
Right.
But when their marketing agency or their ad agency or PR agency or whatever type of creative communications agency comes knocking on the door saying, we want to be more strategically involved and develop your brand moving forward. Oh, we can't give you that information.
Like pulling
Oh,
teeth.
that's true. Oh, no. Why would we let you in our books? Why would you let you know? If you can't let your marketing agency know how your business works and how you make money, what is the bloody point in taking on the agency?
Yeah. And a big part of that is that, especially if we're talking about public companies, they have a difficult today in Canada. I think we live in a different reality than perhaps in the past, where employees aren't taking responsibility as well for the data, and so they don't want people to see things that point fingers.
But you have a choice. If you don't want your business partners to see the data, you better make sure whoever's managing the business partners, marketing agencies, knows the data inside and out.
Right.
And if you've got a CMO not connected 100% to what are the objectives of that brand, whether it be the sales values, share price, and you're holding their feet to the fire on it, then who is responsible for the objectives to be achieved by marketing or any other department in the business? And that's the bit that starts to become disconnected. Marketing is a business driving, growth driving function.
Right.
And CEOs and CTOs need to get on top of understanding what that means and completely get away from the answer to all of my marketing problems is spending X million with Google, with Meta, with any, because it's not.
Right.
And there is too much research that will show you that if you want to deliver great marketing communications, you need digital and. One of the most useful platforms in marketing communications is radio. But somebody could get fired for putting that on a media schedule, but spend $28 gazillion on bits and pieces from the likes of Google. Oh, of course, why wouldn't we?
Yeah, because there's this kind of misnomer where like everyone for the last 20 years has been believing that digital ad placement is somehow measurable in its effectiveness because you're paying cost per click, and click has a calculatable, function. But therein lies a problem, and I think only in the last 5 years have Canadians been waking up to it, which is that the ads don't perform if you're not doing anything very robotic with what you're selling.
Mm-hmm.
If you're selling sneakers and there's a limited supply of that particular model and you're the guys with the sneakers, yeah, people are looking for them on Google, and you can put that ad in front of them when they search and they'll buy that sneaker.
Yeah, but on top of that, you need trust.
Right.
So if I'm a retailer, I need people to know to buy it from me than X unnamed retailer they found online.
True.
And that's where brand value comes in.
Absolutely.
And the thing that the major retailers have missed the artistry in is brand communications, because what they've gone to is sales provocation, tactical maneuvers,
yes,
which puts them in the same bucket as everybody else. It's why you're seeing lots of major retailers really struggling in a marketplace that actually has been digitized. The problem hasn't been the digitization, because that's just another tool of getting your message out. It's because their brand equity's fallen to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hate to say it, but Hudson Bay, where is your equity value? Where were you when customers needed you? Where was your outreach into communities? And no, you didn't. You went tactical, and we've just seen the results of it.
Yeah, it became a real estate company, didn't it? Absolutely. And I think this is a poignant point for the Canadian market, definitely, that, brand is something to invest in and be intimate with. It is everything. It is the beginning of all relationships that you can then calculatively or assumedly calculatively monetize, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about this aspect of the communication gap with marketing. And I think it comes down to process and back to this entertainment kind of factor. I feel like the education around what marketing is and can do is lacking in the modern context, because you've got your textbook kind of knowledge that people might acquire in school.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got your learned knowledge that people used to do the grunt work of 10 years of slavery within the industry to get to become a marketer with some experience and some knowledge. But the tools are changing in terms of how people get their message out. There's a lot of fluidity in the marketplace on the digital side. And at the same time, with all the churn in tenure of clients at agencies and staff at agencies as well changing, all of that flux, I think, has kind of left the information gap of the client side confused as to how to approach the market, and at the same time left a lot of opportunity on the table for marketers not to be able to attract new clientele to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean through RFPs. I mean, clients should be banging on the doors of the most creative marketing companies in the world to say, you guys are smart. I remember this was happening when I lived in New York in 2005 with Wyden and Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that era for W&K or WK, whatever people call it, who are cool. Everyone was like, you guys are amazing. Like, you guys are so cool. Mm-hmm. You're so creative. We need to do something with you. And they were like, oh, we're too busy. But that phenomenon, I haven't heard for a decade at least of any company complaining that they're too busy if they're a creative agency in Canada.
Oh, some of them are.
Yeah.
Some of them are. And I think there's a big difference that I notice. And I notice very strongly here in Canada. There are those businesses that know what they're getting out of bed for, and those businesses that are operating like telesales.
Mm-hmm.
So what they'll do is the client will tell them what to do, and they'll go off and do it. There are other agencies who are sharper, smarter, and actually more profitable agencies.
Sure.
And what they're doing is they're going, yeah, but why? And I wouldn't do it that way. And actually, that investment's not strong enough. Let me tell you what you'll get for that. But actually, for you to do this, I think you need to invest more.
Right.
If that's your challenge, then we can work with you. But if it's not, we don't do tactical marketing communications.
Sure.
And so they'd be much more consultative.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the right move, because there's so much more opportunity upstream in strategic thinking, creative thinking from agencies, and it should be much more expensive than current clients are paying for. But I wanted to take you up on one of the things you did say, which is about the fragmentation of the market and all of this type of thing. And it might be my age, but I don't believe that's an issue. That is a distressed purchase issue. What people need to do is go, well, hang on, whoa, love it. AI's all over my face. Got it. But I'm selling butter in supermarkets. What are my consumers doing? Which means you go back to first principles marketing.
Sure.
And so any new communication channel, any new piece of technology should be evaluated in the same way old channels of marketing communication should be evaluated. The problem we've got in the marketplace, and this has been for a while now, is those extolling the data to the market have vested interest in what they're saying. The tech companies have all given millions and millions of presentations for free across the world to agencies all the time. Free training. If it's free, you're the product.
Absolutely.
And so therefore what they're telling you suits your purpose, you purchasing from them.
Right.
When actually one of the key things that agencies need to do, and I do believe that they need to reevaluate their relationship with media agencies in this regard, they need to pay more for media planning and not be just looking at the cost of media purchasing, because the media planners should, for your brand with your consumers, tell you where you need to be and at what point in time. That methodology of media planning is as old as I am.
Sure.
All we've got is a bigger smorgasbord of things to play in.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you should play in all of them. And in fact, our research and most of the research around marketing effectiveness around the world will tell you the sweet spot of the number of channels you should be using is 4 or 5. The minute you go higher than that, your marketing effectiveness declines. If you're lower than that, it declines. So you need to know what channels work, and it starts with where are your consumers and at what point will they listen to you on their journey through their day.
Right.
That is as old as marketing. But the problem is everybody is a bit like cats with light pens. Oh, sparkling new thing. Let's go play with that. Let's look at that. And that's fine. But your consumers aren't doing that. And you need to accept that. So go back to first principles. Where are my consumers and when can I talk to them? And what is the right story to tell them? And that hasn't changed the entire time I've been in the industry.
So as agencies are constantly faced with the creative challenge of solving customer problems and ideally being held accountable for the effectiveness of their work, I think the storytelling being missing of this amazing adventure that they're constantly on is problematic, because not only are the great stories behind campaigns that could live out or outlive and outlast even some campaign work, right? Not told. Agencies, obviously talent acquisition, and there's this like I think, I don't know why. Okay, I'm gonna bounce around here with this, but I feel like for the last couple decades in North America, agencies have felt that like, okay, yes, the C-suite at agencies are wearing too many hats and running around, and they don't have time to explain why they're cool. But there's also been this value for mystique, and it could be a client acquisition strategy where they count on inbound sales opportunities being motivated by press-worthy successes and awards. And other than that, maintaining a kind of veneer of mystique supposedly keeps clients guessing as to what's under the hood and ignoring trying to qualify the agency before giving them a call to say, wow, you're so cool, I want to find out more through working with you. Is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the key thing there is, and it steps straight into one of the things that we built about 5 years ago now, the way that agencies win business is with a jazz hands moment. It is, we're going to give you an RFP. And once you've filled in this huge grid with all this chargeable rates for different people, which we will beat you up on once we hand you over to procurement. For the marketer, what they want is, okay, without me giving you any information and you're not really understanding our brand or where we are, we want you to come up with a campaign. And what they want you to do is do all this speculative, all this free work, all this creative ideation in order to work into a pitch and go, ta-da!
Yeah.
And the client sits and go, oh my God, you have to be my agency.
Right.
That has got to stop.
100%.
Because the way that an agency should be selected is on qualification. And that means, and the ICA has a full, for any brand, no matter what size they are, we have a full free to every client in the country, a kit, qualification-based selection toolkit. It has all the grids, all the forms, all the paperwork you can need, and we can even help you deploy it. But it's based on very simple principles. Show me the case studies of what you have done. Show me what you've done that speak to my challenge, my issue, my category. Then show me how you're structured and your processes that mean you can replicate success. We'll have a couple of interviews, we'll have a chat, job done. That, and often when I talk to procurement people, whenever we've done this, they'll look at, but what about, no. Think about how you've recruited your best people. You ask for resumes. You put out the budget you've got for the talent you want. You invite people to send resumes in. You'll shortlist with that basic information. You'll then invite people in for interviews. You might give them a presentation to do with an idea. You won't ask them to deliver a strategy for running the company or a department before they've set foot in the door. Why? Because it's ludicrous. So why would you do that with an agency?
Right.
And the other thing is, I do think that within that, corporations need to be really honest. Are they doing the agency selection for money reasons? At which point, don't ask the agency to do anything, just ask them for their prices. But if you are doing it just based on price, then you're going to go for the basic or somewhere just above. You've no idea what you're getting. You don't know if they're qualified. And so we need some scientific steps into agency selection. And the stupid thing is, doing a qualification-based selection, which is the entire way that architecture and engineering and other parts of our economy are selected, is faster and more accurate than asking for the dog and pony show of show me some nice ideas. I've never understood this, and I have been criticized. Our fellow association in the United States, the 4As, is very critical of the ICA's position on this, because democratically they have found out that some of their smaller agencies want to be able to do speculative work, free work and ideas, because they're trying to expand into a new territory and I'm like, but what? Okay. So showing free ideas allows an agency to show it's capable of doing something in a category it's not working in. Why isn't it that you can state instead the business qualification that says you can also understand that market because of these markets you've worked in? Because at the end of the day, they're the same bloody consumers.
Right.
And so it's about putting business regimen into how client-agency relationships start that will take away from the jazz hands, dog and pony moment of, oh my God, did you see that idea in that pitch? Wasn't that really, really great? Or I remember the last time I ever sat in a pitch round for a rather large energy company in the UK. And we were visiting the agencies and they would come up with negative reasons to cut the agencies down. And this energy company were trying to make themselves appear greener. Name an energy company that hasn't. And they just said, before we walked in to visit the agencies, their piece was, if anybody shows me a polar bear, they're out. And what did every agency pitch have in it?
Polar bear.
A polar bear. Why? Because that's all everybody was talking about at the time.
Yeah.
And so don't look at the creative ideas. And even in Canada, there are people who disagree with me on this, on the speculative work. But the problem is, are you qualified to do it?
Yeah.
And are you able to envelop yourself around me, my team, and my brand at the corporation to replicate success? And that's all that should be asked.
I agree. And I think this idea of kind of speculative creative work specifically is difficult because you can't qualify the hourly rate for ideas when procurement, in selecting the one that wins, or whoever, I mean, on the client side, CMO, selecting the winning idea, is typically not a scientific process regardless.
No, it's a gut reaction.
9 times out of 10.
I mean,
unless it's a working
fairness,
relationship with the agency.
yes.
Like a lot of career history behind the marketing team on the client side. And so, yeah, it's really interesting to see that jazz hand moment still being a thing. And at the same time that agencies walk into pitches trying to sell creativity, because that should be an assumptive capacity. And I think also this brings us to this lovely video podcast series that we're about to start producing is, the series called Canadians Create, because I think this for me has been something that's been missing in Canada is the dialogue around how marketing solutions have been created.
Yeah.
And that behind the scenes look at a case study, where the case studies that I commonly review are going to be like 2-minute videos that are almost like little ads for, the agency. And there's so much more to the story of like,
there's so much more to understand. I mean, if I was a client, the first question I'd ask any agency who's put in front of me is, what went wrong? And how did you resolve that? And the resolution you came up with, how are you structured that means you would do the same if I did something wrong in our communication strategy? That's consultancy. That's what they expect from their lawyers. That's what they expect from their management consultants. And so they should expect the same from their agency.
Right.
And it's their ability to deploy at speed marketing communication savvy and know-how to know that you can trust the agencies involved with the future. And to be honest with you, the sector that seems to do quite well out of that right now is the PR agencies. The closer to crisis management PR, the further up the food chain you are with the C-suite. And the C-suite is listening to every word you're saying because they're trusting you are going to, when called upon, get them out of a hole because they perceive crisis management PR aligned to future risk management, which is absolutely true. But why should your advertising or your comm strategy or your direct marketing strategy or your social strategy be any different? Why are you not thinking through the business impact, the risk potential of communication strategies the way you would do on crisis management? And that's the artistry of agencies that can do that thinking in real time with you, for you, with full glaring knowledge of the good, bad, and everything of that client are the ones that are delivering the most effective marketing results. And when they're allowed to test and learn and develop over time, incorporating both brand strategy and short-term tactical support mechanics, that's what's delivering the results.
Right.
And yeah, what I genuinely believe of the Canadian marketplace here is when I sit down and talk to agencies and they'll talk about the backdrop of a campaign and how that happened and what went wrong in a way that they, because they trust me and they tell me this stuff, that needs to be emptied out into the marketplace because that tells you about the business artistry of what they're capable of.
Right.
And the thing is, we are better at it here in Canada than the larger, flabbier markets because you can hide poor performance in large budget marketing. In smaller budget marketing communications that needs to be more integrated, and by integrated I mean it needs to be seamless across your social, your in-store, your out-of-home, your advertising, your PR strategy, your experiential strategy. We're a much more integrated market, and therefore we get all consumer eye lines. We are better than that, than either London or New York put together, frankly. So that's, if we can unpack through this podcast series, the whole notion of how we got to the ideas, how we managed to, because we know, zip across different communication channels and bring them together for this narrative on brand or this tactic, that will show brands across the globe, at least for my testing and learning, if not the whole goddamn account, I need to move my business to Canada, because that's where it's happening, because we've got a more integrated approach, a far more diverse workforce than any of the G7.
Sure.
And we can deliver marketing communications that works because of who we are, how we're built, and how we're trained to deliver. The only problem Canada has is it's not given enough of the opportunity to show the world. And that's what we need to do. So combining what we're going to be doing with you guys, the whole Brands Need More Canada, with government support, and taking the narrative, as I'll be doing at the end of this month. I will be at Canada House, Trafalgar Square, London, doing a breakfast for the top pitch consultants in the UK marketplace. And I'll be saying, look, there are the pieces of work that are currently being done by Canadian agencies. Here is the StartWell podcast series to understand more depth behind this thinking.
Right.
From business people talking to business people. Now tell me you shouldn't be understanding and pushing your clients, and next time you organize a pitch, to include a good number of Canadian agencies on the pitch list. And that's where I think pulling what you believe in, what the government believes in, both federally and provincially, about driving growth, what we believe in, and collectively, instinctively know what we're capable of in Canada, that is then will start to turn the tide on how we market ourselves to the rest of the world. And if we've got these platforms to sell, I damn well know we've got the ideas and capability to tell the world what we can deliver. And it's smarter, more effective, and more cost effective than you'll find certainly south of the border.
I certainly have a lot of enthusiasm for that aspect of it, for like, as soon as these episodes reach eyeballs around the world and people start waking up to kind of how we do things, they'll realize it is different. And I think this is, again, a narrative that we're poor in Canada across the board at articulating to the world. However, you're right. Our diversity, our living links with the world, these are things that local marketers have to negotiate in order to communicate. So we're primed for operating on a global level. Yet our economy locally has been so North American focused for so long. So it's a very exciting time, I think, in the enablement that the ICA is kind of trying to push for the industry globally. And I'm super stoked to have these conversations, because I think it's also about, often cases, unfortunately, but in communications, it's about giving the opportunity for stories to reach audiences. And when that's not facilitated by someone outside, often cases in industry, then people don't tell their stories.
Yeah. And the reality, and we've already talked about this, the underinvestment in business development and marketing, that's where the ICA steps in.
Right.
And collectively markets the capability of Canadian agencies, from Halifax and St. John's all the way across to Vancouver, are the type of agencies, the nuance of agencies, the capability of the understanding they've got, and the textures and fabric of that agency thinking. And then I will then be wondering, why on earth would a major client be running and testing and learning ahead of spending billions of dollars in just one state in America, when you can understand more channels, diverse people, languages, by bringing it to one province in Canada? I won't understand why they're doing it. And I think any CEO who then finds out that's happened should probably fire that CMO.
Brands need more Canada.
They certainly do. And I absolutely believe that, even with this accent.
It was a pleasure spending some time chatting about this.
Yeah, great. Thank you for your support.
Of course.